Welcome, and I know it's very late, 6 o'clock, and we thank you for all of that. This evening, I'm joined by Lucy Supperston, who is the Director of Innovation and Skills at Sports Leaders UK, and Carol Horman, who is a freelance writer and trainer and well known to many of you, I'm sure, and is the author of this wonderful qualification. We're absolutely delighted at this partnership. We've worked with sports leaders for a long time. What's been lovely is everybody is totally committed to this. It's been seamless and a real celebration that this has been put on the qualifications framework so quickly, which is hopefully tantamount to the brilliant authoring and how effective everyone has worked together in such challenging times. So what we'd like to do, we have Simon Roach, who's AFBI's own Professor Whitty. He's going to be working all the slides here. So Simon, could we have the first slide, please? And what we're going to talk through is the following 4 bullets with the rationale behind this, which I shall do. And then Lucy will go through the process of how you become a delegate or how you become a professional learning centre, or if you're already a professional learning centre, how you can deliver this qualification. And then Carol will go through the details of the content and what it actually comprises. There are opportunities to ask in questions. There is a question box for you to type in your questions. We'll probably do this at the end unless there is a burning question while we're all speaking. Often some of the questions you have will be answered when you listen and go through the presentation. Okay, Simon, can I have the first slide, please? Now, this is something you probably can't remember because we haven't had a clear navigated maze to go through for some time now. But we want to thank you for everything you've done. We know that you always place the physical and emotional well-being of all young people at the forefront of everything you do. And what is particularly evident is that people who teach physical education are extremely creative, they are extremely innovative, and they can navigate whatever educational landscape is in front of them. And often the DFE presents a maze, often the school presents a maze, or circumstances and the context in which you're working, but you always find a way through. And you know, you've supported, as I say, the emotional well-being, but more so than ever, it's come to the forefront that our children and young people are really suffering. And the next slide really is what our maze probably looks like now and how you feel at this time of the year. Everybody we speak to is absolutely exhausted, and the children and young people themselves must also be suffering terribly, both at home and in the workplace. But everything you have done, you need to be proud of. And there's an old saying of my mum's that I always quote, and that is, you only look back to see how far you've travelled. And I think that's really important. We all know that the press were not particularly kind to the teaching profession over the weekend. But you know, they're not there, they're not doing the job that you do. And I think it's really important to remember when you speak to the parents and listen to what they say, you know you're doing a great job. And it's so easy to be dragged down when you see something about teachers not doing what they should be doing or wanting to finish early and all of that. And as frontline workers, you are equally as valuable as colleagues out there doing other jobs in the front line. And I think it's really important that we're able to articulate to our senior leaders, to governors, to parents, the wider community, and to our children and young people as well, how important their emotional well-being is and how important physical education is. We cannot be the Swiss Army knife to solve all the ills of society, but we can make a major contribution as part of a whole holistic solution. Okay, Simon, thank you. So what we have here is the rationale. And as I say, you've already done a fabulous job and you've always done a brilliant job. But we've not always celebrated that recognition. And, you know when I ask teachers how they've done or what they're doing, and I say, that's brilliant, they say, well, doesn't everybody do it? Actually, no, they don't. You're doing a super job, which isn't always recognised. And it's only through the work of the task force that we've probably realised we actually have done ourselves a bit of a disservice here, because we don't want to add to your workload, and to be fair, neither do the Department for Education, but we actually need to recognise what is going on in schools in terms of PE, school sport and physical activity. And I was talking to a teacher who said to me, do you know what? You're not adding to the workload because we do this anyway. And that was sort of a light bulb moment for me, thinking, well, they do it, so let's recognise that and celebrate it and raise the profile of colleagues teaching physical education, whether it's primary, second, or in a special educational needs school. It's also about rewarding that, and often we know that head teachers have only got a finite amount of money, and if they want you to do something and you want to get professional learning accredited, then that needs to be rewarded. And this is one way of doing it, because this has been through a rigorous process in order to get on the qualifications framework, which Lucy will talk to you about later. And so by going on this and being rewarded for actually celebrating what you do is absolutely vital. We all know as well, one of the best ways to get some professional learning is to share best practice and celebrate what you're doing. And someone might have a solution that you're not thought about, or you might come together and think about creating one as a team on your course. And actually, this is a great way to do that. But also, it may be you're going to upskill one another in a different way. It may be that when you go back, you are able to share the ideas from the course and upskill them other colleagues in the school, because that is what is sustainable. What is really important is the relationship to the curriculum. Ofsted is saying we need a broad and balanced curriculum, and we spent a long time with the Ofsted HMI the other day, and she reinforced everything Amanda Spielman has said, that it's not just about having a COVID curriculum. It needs to be broad and balanced. The worst thing that could happen, which we agree with, is when we are past and through this awful maze we're having to navigate around COVID, is we do not want children to have lost out through a narrowed curriculum. And I'm sure you'll be pleased to know that no longer are schools just judged on their results. And talking to head teachers, they're saying to us, you know, come on, I can't focus on PE because I need to do catch up. Well, actually, if the children and young people are not socially, emotionally, physically well, are they going to be able to catch up? And we think this qualification will help you to articulate the importance of emotional well-being. So it's really important that we elevate the position of PE, both with our colleagues in school, with the parents, and obviously with the young people as well. And one of the issues that we discussed was, who is this for? Now, as teachers within the workforce, you are in a very strong position to create organisational change. You will be advocates. You will actually be great trailblazers to embed some kind of change in your school to articulate the importance of physical education and the impact it has on emotional well-being. Now, that's very difficult to do if you are not a teacher and if you are visiting the school, because you may not be there long enough or be embedded in the whole school culture. So this is starting with the teachers. And Lucy reminded me earlier on when we were talking that, you know, this has come together very quickly in terms of getting it on the framework. So this is step one, really. And it may be further down the line that we actually look at whether or not there's a qualification for other colleagues supporting this. Okay, Simon, please, may I have the next slide? We all know, and we can all sort of wax lyrical about PE, school, sport, physical activity. It's very, very important to all of us. We know the phenomenal difference it makes. Carol authored 2 posters for us on reactivation of learning, which have been extremely popular, and it clearly shows the how, why, what, etc. about the contribution to emotional, social, behaviour, everything, cognitive development. But again, we perhaps have not shouted loud enough about this, let alone the contribution to PE itself, the whole physical domain. So this, more than ever, is our window of opportunity to elevate the subject, celebrate, recognise the importance of it, and place it at the heart of the curriculum. And it is really, really important we turn rhetoric into reality for school leaders too. You know, this trailblazing is something that is really important, because this is about insider growth. And we believe, and the business community, everybody believes, that the inner strength within a situation such as a school context is what grows a sustainable strategy. And if we want it to grow, then we really need to embed it from within. So I'm now going to pass over to Lucy, who will take you through the process.
Thanks, Sue, and thanks, Simon, and thank you for actually outlining the rationale for that so clearly and why we have come together. As two organisations, we work for a long time together, and really my main aim as being part of this project to develop the qualification was to make sure that we have a high quality qualification that has rigour behind it, actually will professionally develop the workforce to enable them to deliver fantastic PE curriculum, which will be underpinned by some of the strategies and some of the knowledge that Carol, through the content, has actually included within the qualification. So what we have created is a level 4 in supporting pupils' wellbeing through physical education, and really there's a few key parts to that title. So to begin with, what's really important to know is this sits on a regulated qualification framework. As it's SLQ Sports Leaders, we are a regulated awarding organisation, and that means that we have to make sure that the qualification, whoever achieves the qualification, actually does have the competencies that are shown throughout the qualification, and that they are able to go and implement that, not just for a day, not just for the next lesson that they're going to be teaching within the PE curriculum, but actually implementing the strategies throughout the time that they are delivering PE curriculum. So that was really important when we started with developing the level 4. It's at level 4, it sits on the framework, it's already there. We have got a start date for January, and so that we can start delivering the qualification from January through our professional learning centres. And I'll talk a bit more about that moving forward. So who is this for? And Sue touched on this to begin with. Really, it is for any colleagues out there that are delivering PE curriculum through primary and secondary teachers. So it is for primary and secondary teachers with qualified teacher status that are delivering PE curriculum. So within a primary school, that will be a majority of teachers will have responsibility for delivering PE curriculum, and in a secondary school there will probably be a department that will be delivering PE. So there is a wide variety of individuals, and I have to say Carol's fantastic authoring has actually meant that this is applicable for anybody delivering PE curriculum, whether that is to the lower age ranges or to the higher age ranges in primary and secondary. The objective of the qualification, we always have to have an objective of it when we are developing, and the first one, as Sue has mentioned, it's about elevating the profession. Really, it's the professional learning qualification to ensure that you are implementing whatever you learn back into your day job as a teacher. So it's about creating specialists in supporting the emotional and social well-being of pupils, whether that's in primary or secondary, through the physical education curriculum, through physical education, school sport, physical activity, but really making us think about how can you support them to improve their well-being as they move through the PE curriculum. Key to this was also about elevating PE itself within the school. So it's enabling advocacy of implementing emotional and social wellbeing through curriculum delivery. So we're not just preparing teachers, PE teachers, to be able to go out there and teach using strategies that promote wellbeing, but actually this is more about ensuring that they are sharing their good practice with other departments, with other areas of curriculum, so that it can be implemented throughout the whole school. So that was the objective of the qualification. Next slide, please, Simon. Thank you. So the key outcomes of the qualification is that the delegates, the people who are on the qualification to achieve it, there's 4 key outcomes. Really, it's about planning, implementing and evaluating physical education approaches, strategies of how to deliver, and it's about supporting pupils' emotional and social wellbeing within their own practice. So ensuring that you are implementing strategies to encourage positive well-being, and ensuring that those pupils can go and actually take care of their own emotional and social well-being moving forward. So there is a whole unit on looking at how you can promote pupils themselves to take care of their own emotional and social well-being, and Carol will cover that a bit later on. It's also about assisting colleagues. So I've just mentioned that this is about advocacy in particular, and actually helping others. So that might be other colleagues that are working within the PE curriculum, and then in future it might be actually about the whole school development and how they're promoting wellbeing throughout curriculum areas. What we want to do from the outcomes of this is actually upskill a teacher to be able to implement strategies so that they can use that every time that they go to teach, and that you're thinking about this not just as a one-off or one-stop shop, but actually implementing it throughout the curriculum at all times, so that we are always encouraging a positive emotional and social wellbeing within young people. Next slide, please, Simon. Thank you. So the actual delivery mechanism, at SLQ Sports Leaders, we use professional learning centres to deliver our professional qualifications, and we have many out there. There's around about 40 of them at the moment, and they're delivering our level 5s and 6 qualifications in PE specialisms within primary PE. So what we really wanted to look at is how can we take those professional learning centres and actually have a qualification that they can deliver around the social and emotional and social well-being of young people. So we developed the qualification to be a total qualification time of 30 guided learning hours. That's the average amount of time that the qualification takes. And the 30 guided learning hours is a fairly bite-sized qualification. So it's something that should be able to be delivered and taken by a delegate whilst they are continuing to carry on their teaching within the PE curriculum. The 30 hours itself is actually split up into two areas. First of all, the tutored time, so there's 10 hours of tutored time, and then there's 20 hours of directed study. Now, the key difference between these two things is that the tutored time, the 10 hours, and actually it's really useful at this point in time of the current pandemic situation, but the 10 hours is actually really flexible and is able to happen virtually. So the centres that will be the professional learning centres that will be delivering the qualification, they will be able to deliver all of the knowledge content through of the 10 hours actually virtually. So as I say, that's fairly useful at the moment, especially with the current situation that we're in. It will then be asking the delegates to complete tasks, and each delegate will be able to take those tasks back into their teaching practice, into their schools, and work on those and implement what they've learned into the schools and evidence that as they go through. So the directed study is all about them going back, the delegates going back and delivering in their schools and recording what they have done. And then they will take that evidence back to their professional learning centre, and the assessment will be carried out by them to hopefully find that they have achieved the qualification and they've shown that they've got a specialism in this area at the level 4 standard. Next slide, please. So if you are somebody who is actually wanting to take part on the qualification, there is a few steps that you need to go through to actually complete the qualification. So we're recommending as an awarding organisation, and with AFPI professional version of this, we've actually recommended that this is taken over 2 academic terms. So it should take around 12 to 18 weeks to complete this from start to finish. We're looking at evidence in it through your teaching. So you should be able to actually build into day-to-day the delivery and the tasks that you need to complete as you are delivering PE within your schools. So the steps that they will go through, first of all, a delegate will need to register with a professional learning centre. So we will make sure that we find a way for you to find those professional learning centres, and I'll talk about that later. You'll then need to attend the learning session. So this could be by webinar. In the future, it might be blended learning. You might find that some professional learning centres decide to do this face-to-face, some of it webinar. But in the current circumstances, it is absolutely fine to have all attendance through webinar. You'll then be asked as a delegate to go back to your school and to start completing the task and completing the demonstration that you need to show that you have competence in delivering the strategies that you have learnt about around the emotional and social well-being of young people. There will be the requirement of your sessions, your actual lessons, to be observed by what we call an independent assessor, and I'll talk about that in a minute. There's 2 opportunities for independent assessment to happen, which is observation of you delivering and also observation of you carrying out an advocacy role, which is the next part of the journey. So you'll be asked, once you have been through the learning, once you have actually started to implement the strategies within your PE curriculum, you'll be asked to actually advocate this to your colleagues within the PE delivery, but also advocate it to your senior leadership team, so that you have a whole school buy-in about how you can adapt and implement strategies into your curriculum across the whole school. Finally, at the end of this, you will have collated, over the 30 hours, you have collated evidence of what you have completed, what competencies you have, and you will create this into what we call a delegate evidence record. And I'll show you an example of that in a second. And that will be assessed back at your professional learning centre. So they will assess that. They are digital, so if you are taking part in it from a long way away from your professional learning centre's actual location, that can be sent to them digitally so that you can have that assessed moving forwards. Hopefully, by the end of that journey, you will have achieved the level 4 qualification and you'll receive a certificate for that. And that obviously is professional development that can go towards your next steps and your progression if you so choose to continue with your training. Next slide, please, Simon. So I've talked there about how you would be assessed as a delegate and how the Professional Learning Centre will do that. The delegate evidence record is really the key document that you will need to complete. This is completely supplied by SLQ Sports Leaders. It's been developed by ourselves, AFP, with Carol's content contributing to that as well. And the delegate evidence record, it's really includes these 3 key things. First of all, practical observation through the role of independent assessors, and so we will actually have them complete an observation record at the delegate school. It will also have questioning of underpinning knowledge via worksheets, so there'll be certain parts that you'll be required to complete to evidence that you understand certain aspects of the actual qualification. And then finally, there'll also be plans and evaluations completed during the course. So all of this is guided throughout the delegate evidence record, and it is something that once completed, that is what is sent back to Professional Learning Centre to be assessed for you to have the decision on whether you complete the qualification, achieve the qualification or not. Next slide, please, Simon. Thank you. So I've mentioned about independent assessor. Really, the independent assessor is somebody who you work with. It may be a line manager, it might be somebody who is in your department, head of department, it could be another member of the senior leadership team. But really, they're about supporting the assessment decisions made by the Professional Learning Centre. So they will come in and they will actually observe you implementing the strategies. They'll also observe and listen to your when you actually are an advocate for the strategies that you've implemented across the school. So they're internal to the delegate school, that's the key thing. So once again, that's really helpful in the current circumstances. You're not having to worry about having external people come in to assess within the school. Key for this is that they complete the observation forms. There's 2 opportunities for them to do that, so you are required to have 2 observations at any one point. To try and make it nice and simple and to have some consistency and some real buy-in from the senior leadership team within your schools, you can actually use the same person for both of those observations moving forwards. There's lots more information on that. We also will provide for the Professional Learning Centres training about how you can use this as well moving forward. But really, it's about you understanding that to complete the qualification, you need to have buy-in from colleagues around you so that they can observe and make sure that you complete and show the competencies that are required from the qualification. Next slide, please, Simon. Thank you. So if you are a professional learning centre or you would like to become one, so these are the deliverers of the qualification. So they tutor, so that might be the virtual content, or it might be, fingers crossed, in the future, it could be the blended approach where it might be a bit of face-to-face, a bit of virtual, and how you want to become one. Really, we approve professional learning centres to deliver the level 4 qualification. We have 2 induction dates coming up for this. That's on Wednesday the 20th in January and Tuesday the 16th of February in 2021, both of them. And we also provide assessment and verification training if you haven't been a professional learning centre before. If you're already a professional learning centre with us, you'll probably have been through that training, so you're just required to do the induction training, which is run by AFP, and actually Carol's going to be delivering that, so a very knowledgeable person to be training there. as we said previously, this is quite different to when we've launched the level 5-6. With this, PLCs can actually deliver remotely. So a PLC might have delegates from all over the country. So you actually can provide dates when you're running the course and actually have delegates register with you, but you can be across from any location, which hopefully will make it more accessible for delegates to get onto the qualification in the first place. Next slide, please. Okay, the cost. So from a delegate point of view, so if you are a teacher that would like to come on here for professional development, come on to the qualification, we are recommending to the professional learning centres, and they are the centres that will charge you and invoice you for this, that we are recommending that it's around the £350 per delegate to complete. From a PLC point of view, the qualification cost itself is £100. To do that, we have got a get started package for PLCs for this qualification, which is for 10 delegates and the level 4 content training all in one, which is £1,150. Obviously, any questions about that, you can ask, you can contact us and we can take you through that. We will obviously help PLCs get set up, and from a delegate point of view, the PLCs will take you through how you register and how they would invoice for the qualification. Next slide, please. So before we go on to content, which Carol will take you through, I just wanted to outline how the qualification is made up. And if you went on to the regulated qualification framework, which I'm sure you're all on very regularly like myself, but we have got 4 units for this qualification, and if you remember, it was 30 hours for the total qualification time. How it's been made up is that each of those units are linked to the assessment tasks, and as you can see, the delegate evidence record will actually consist of 9 separate assessment tasks, and they are completely run through in the delegate evidence record. So if you complete the delegate evidence record and it's up to the standard, then you will complete and achieve the qualification. Carol is going to go on to what the unit's content is, but just a very quick overview is Unit 1 is really the knowledge unit about understanding PE and the impact on emotional and social well-being of pupils. The Unit 2 is really about the planning, the doing and the reviewing, how you implement that into the curriculum and how you deliver that. The Unit 3 is about empowering pupils to take care of their own emotional and social well-being and what strategies you use to do that. So that's something that could actually link up to our other qualifications in the sports leadership side as well. So you could use that as one of the strategies. And then Unit 4 is about drawing on physical education to influence the whole school. So that's really where your advocacy role comes in, and how you actually upskill and share good practice with those around you to make sure it's implemented not just within the lessons that you are completing, but really it's implemented across the whole school and hopefully with other subject leaders as well. Over to Carol now to go through a bit more about the content and the knowledge that she's been writing for the qualification. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Lucy. Simon, if you could show the slide, that's great. There's a lot of detail on the slide, but really I'll just want to start by saying we believe passionately that well-being is at the heart of high quality physical education. So as both Sue and Lucy alluded to, this isn't separate, it's not a project, it's not a tick box qualification, it's fundamental to high quality physical education. So in some ways, when I was writing the content, I kept checking myself and thinking, actually, I'm just writing about high quality PE. And that's right, it should be intrinsic to high quality PE. But I think sometimes when we're planning, when we're delivering and reflecting on PE, perhaps we don't have that well-being as much at the forefront of our heads as we should. So what the qualification is really about is trying to make well-being explicit. And that means planning for it. So a good part of the qualification takes you through a process of considering what we can deliver through physical education and why we would use physical education to improve young people's emotional and social well-being, and then looking at the practicalities of your physical education delivery and what that means for your pupils in your school. and then being able to reflect on that and say, what difference did we make? And as Lucy said, then being able to spread that message wider. So absolutely, this is about core teaching and learning. It's about your core curriculum, and at no point should it feel like you're doing a project. And if it does, then it's probably not working and we probably haven't pitched it right. So we are talking about that emotional and social well-being being planned for and explicit. So not just you're aware of it as the teacher, but your colleagues are aware, your senior leadership's aware, and parents are aware, and above all, young people are aware that that is a core purpose of physical education. So it makes it relevant to them in their daily lives, beyond school, as well as within school generally. So the content that we've developed, you'll see there, it looks a little bit confusing because we've got 5 modules to reflect 4 units. And that's quite simply because the unit 1 has such a lot of content in it that we felt that was undeliverable, particularly if we're delivering remotely. So we've broken that down, and that's why we've come up with the 5 modules. And for each of the modules, as Lucy said, we've kind of working on two approaches. Clearly, we have to work with the situation we're in at the moment. So the content is very much written as delegate-facing content that could be delivered remotely now. But equally, there are suggestions, ideas, and examples in there of how the content might be developed when we can finally get back to face-to-face learning. So, as I say, the content is set up as PowerPoints. So there are clear delegate-facing slides that you could literally just put up and work through. And those include interactive tasks. It is not just a chalk and talk. And very clear messages for you as a tutor about what the content is and how that reflects the learning outcomes and the assessment criteria in the units. So at every stage, as you're working through as tutors, you should be able to see how what you're delivering will help delegates to meet the learning outcomes and to meet the assessment criteria. There are also suggested ways of delivery, and as I say, they're both online and remote for when we do get there. And there are links to external resources. So we've tried to provide you with all the sources of the evidence, all the research documents that back up the content for the qualification, but also links to practical tools that can bring alive the delivery and will help the delegates to then advocate things back in school. So for example, there are links to videos that they might then choose to share with senior leaders and other colleagues. So we've tried to provide as much as possible so you can pick it up and go, obviously in your own style and in your own way. And as Lucy says, although we've broken it up into 5 modules, approximately 2 hours each, depending on how you decide to deliver them, you are free to deliver that in any way you want. You might choose to subdivide them even further and have just 1 hour modules spread over a longer time. Or eventually, once we return to face-to-face, you might decide to pool some of them together and have half-day sessions, twilight sessions, or full-day sessions even. I think the critical thing, as Lucy says, is we do not envisage being crammed into a short period of time, because the content is all about preparing delegates, preparing the learners to apply it to their practice. And it's critical that they get the time to do that, to be able to reflect on their learning, to be able to apply it to their own practice, to their own pupils, to their own schools, and then review that learning prior to then moving on the next stage, but also as a way of thinking, how do I embed this for the future? So in terms of the specifics, Module 1 is very much about the bigger picture. What do we mean by emotional and social well-being for children and young people? And I've got to be honest, I could have written a qualification about that. When I wrote the first content, I had to go back and delete about 2/3 of it because there is so much. And I think what we've really got to recognise with this qualification, we're not making you an expert in well-being. We're hopefully making you as delegates specialists in promoting emotional and social well-being through physical education. And the physical education bit is critical. There's a whole world out there of other experts who deal in this, but this is about how we tie it in with physical education. And that's a critical distinction there. So it is about what is emotional and social well-being, what are the challenges to young people's emotional and social well-being, and obviously we're in a particular place at the moment where we've seen additional challenges, not to young people's emotional and social well-being, but to our own as well. But it will outlive COVID. This isn't just a qualification for now, it is a qualification for the future. But it also looks at what are the positive factors that contribute to emotional and social well-being. So what are the things that help young people to develop that? And then putting everything into a school context, what does that then mean for you within school and for the pupils within school? And we'll come full loop through the modules, because we'll start by focusing on this why. Why should you be doing this? Why in terms of pupil outcomes? That's the most important message. But also why in terms of school engagement? Why should you be using physical education? Why should the school prioritise this? And then the last module that looks at advocacy will help you to build those messages into your advocacy with senior leaders. So the whole of module 1 is about that why. And if you like, in terms of Ofsted speak, that clearly supports intent. What's the purpose of our education? Then when we go into module 2, we're very much now focusing on physical education. And this is a slightly more theoretical part of the module, of the qualification. So we're beginning to look at which elements of physical education do we need to look at in order then to unpack them in terms of well-being. So those 4 areas that we explore are physical activity itself, so almost the physiological and chemical outputs of physical activity and how they benefit well-being in that physiological sense. But then more personally, looking at the elements of physical education that you can plan for and manage. And they are the learning environment, so that's everything that surrounds physical education, from where you deliver it to who young people take part with, and to the context in which that's taken part. It obviously looks at your curriculum, how that's planned, right from units of work across year groups, across key stages, and then into the nitty-gritty of actual lessons. And then I believe even most importantly is pedagogy, the relationships that you have with children and young people and what that means for your teaching and learning methods. And those 3 are unpacked in theory, if you like, as to what can we do with those in terms of our planning, our implementation, and then reviewing our impact. And that prepares us to move into module 3, which is the actual delivery, planning for the real nitty-gritty of delivery. So the tasks that come in 1 and 2 are perhaps more reflective tasks, where you're thinking about the content and then applying those to your learners in your context so that it's very pertinent. But by the time we leave module 3, you're actually getting ready then to teach at least 1 trial lesson. So in that module 3, we explore lots of examples. We give you an opportunity to share that with other delegates, to think about how am I going to do this before you actually sit down, plan a lesson, go and trial it, and then review how that went. And I think critically, one of the things we know is really important to everybody's well-being is resilience. So when you're thinking about that trialing, you have to be prepared to do things differently, because we know if we don't do things differently, we end up with the outcomes that we've always had. So be brave, have some courage, and be prepared to try things a little differently, because there is no failure, there is only learning. And if we can't model that, then our pupils will never have that resilience either. So real opportunity there to reflect on your own practice and to reflect on your own teaching, but in a way that is going to be supported both by the tutors in the professional learning centres and the fellow delegates who'll be on the course. So once you've had a go in practice, you'll then come back and share that. And then what we're trying to focus on beyond that is empowering pupils, because they can't be reliant on us. They can't be reliant on us for their physical activity, and they certainly can't be reliant on us for their well-being in life. We have to be enablers. We have to learn to let go so children and young people can do this for themselves, preparing for learning across the school generally, but also preparing for that lives as adults. So we really explore the skills that children and young people need in order to be empowered and what empowerment really means. So we explore their skills, and you'll not be surprised to know that the skills they need to take care of their well-being are pretty much the skills they need to be effective learners. And then we also explore the skills and approaches you need as practitioners in order to make that happen with pupils. So again, there's a practical task that we ask at the end of that module, where you'll be giving your pupils a task that's for them to adopt a healthy habit at home, but in a way that is empowering rather than you directing their task. So that's why we encourage it to be a home-based task, but in reality, it could just be a task that happens out with lessons. Then again, you'll come back, review and reflect and share your successes and share with delegates solutions to moving forward, but then we're into that advocacy. So far it's been very much about you as the deliverer, and then that final part is about how you share your learning with your colleagues, with senior leaders, so that the whole school can benefit. And what we do know is that this will always have maximum impact if it is part of a whole school approach. So that's covering a lot of content in a nutshell, but hopefully that's given you a real feel for the topics that you'd be exploring through the qualification. And now I'm going to hand you back to Lucy.
Next slide, please. Thank you. Thank you, Carol, for that. That was fantastic with content and really showed the knowledge coming through that's been working with the qualification building, really. It's now, if people are interested in completing the qualification, achieving the qualification, then or becoming a PLC, then we have set up a web page for you to be able to go on and put your details in moving forward. So the next step really is, if this is something that takes interest for you, then please go to this website, and we have got a flyer that's in the handouts as well that has this link on there, so please do have a look, and you can actually register your interest. What we're aiming to do is connect, well, get PLC set up and approved to be delivering this in the new year as early as possible, and then we will connect delegates as efficiently as possible with those PLCs, so that they can choose which PLCs they would like to go with. So please complete that, and we will receive that and move forward with it in the new year. For final words on this, I'll pass over to Sue, and then we'll deal with any questions that have come through. Thank you.
Can I have the next slide, please, Simon? Thank you. I just want you to bear this in mind. You know, we cannot do anything about COVID. We cannot do anything about anything that's imposed on us from department or the curriculum or whatever, but we can change the way we manage this. And it's really important that we place these young people at the centre of everything that we do. I mean, Carol already alluded to, it's about empowerment, and we really do believe this. The CBI's top 10 employability skills are actually quite embedded within physical education, school sport and physical activity, but at the top there is about emotional resilience. And that's really, really important that we address this. So we'd ask you to look at this, because no matter what journey our children and young people go on, whether it's from primary to secondary school, the journey from secondary to FE or HE or work, we need to be there to ensure they are empowered to make the right decisions and be resilient and be able to make choices. I'm actually going to throw some of the questions open to the panel. I've tried to answer the AFPI ones as we've gone along, but there is one, Lucy, which I can't see really very well on my screen, and I know it's what I'm doing wrong with the IT, but it was asking about is there any link between level 3, 4 and 5? And are there any prerequisites? Can you see that one, Lucy?
Yeah, I've just answered it actually.
Oh, brilliant,
so
sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. I have just said that they're not linked qualifications, because this is obviously a professional development qualification as the other ones are. So they tend to stand alone when they're about different subject areas. So this is a professional development around that emotional and social wellbeing area within through PE. And so it is a standalone at the moment, but as Sue said at the start, and I think I might have reiterated as we went through, we're hoping that this is actually a starting point. This has been pulled together over a very short period of time, and we've tried to be as flexible as possible to move it forward. But in the future, it might be that there is a pathway for this for different individuals that implement different strategies back into PE, and so this is the starting point really, and we're starting with professional development of the teachers that will hopefully have the biggest impact within their school advocacy role that they can play in the future. So they're not linked at as they are. They're all professional. They professionally develop slightly different things. So this one's about the emotional social well-being, whereas the others is about becoming a PE leader, or it's about helping coaches to upskill to be able to support PE staff as well moving forward. Hope that answered your question, Katie.
Thank you, Lucy. Neil's put up a question about how soon can you start? Carol today has agreed the dates for induction, and as soon as you completed that induction, you can start. Carol, do you have those dates at hand for the induction? It's early January? Sorry about that.
It's the 20th of January.
Yeah, so as soon as you've completed your induction and you've got all your materials, then you can start. There they are. Well done. Thank you. Yeah, it was on the Tuesday, 16th February and 20th of January. So that's absolutely key. And as Lucy said, there is a handout on there for you. If you've got more questions, because we're conscious we're just about 3 minutes over, if you have more questions, please send them through to CPD@AFB, and whoever it's aimed at will be able to answer for you, and we'll post those up. Also, if you've got colleagues who want to watch this, it is recorded, it is on the open website, or will be once Simon has got it all sorted, so please feel free. I'd just like to thank you all for staying late after a long day to listen to the webinar, and we do hope that you will join us and join the qualification. What is important, and Carol asked this from the very start, is you're the trailblazers, and you need to feed back and say, actually, we need more of this or less of that, or it's just right. It's absolutely critical that you feed back to us so it can be amended as we go forward to the next stage. So thank you for listening. Good night all, and thank you very much. Thank you, Carol and Lucy too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye all. Bye-bye.